Welcome to Sea View Circle, our recap podcast in which your hosts, Doug and Brady, that's us, we review our favorite TV shows and movies of the past, present, and possibly the future, all in service to our end goal of determining how highbrow or lowbrow our viewing tastes are. And along the way, we also often wax philosophical about vintage styles, fashions, and filming locations.
So if this is your first time here, we welcome you to The Circle.
Yes, and my name's Doug. I am a real estate agent here in Los Angeles, but I'm also a lover of music, DJ, and a connoisseur of all vintage things, like whether that's cars, clothing, items, thrift shopping. That's my bag.
My name is Brady, and I'm a sometime DJ, sometime actor, sometime writer, also living in Los Angeles here with Doug. And I'm also a purveyor of vintage oddities. If you are just joining us here for the first time, we finished the first season of our podcast last week. We have been covering season 1 of Knots Landing, which is the longest running nighttime soap opera from its era.
And if you didn't already know, Knots Landing actually originally ran from 1979 all the way up to 1993. And now 344 episodes are actually available on streaming platforms.
Finally, after many years that
many
they were
years
unavailable.
Unavailable or bootleg or whatever.
Which is what sort of prompted us to start this podcast. Of course, our podcast was always meant to cover other series too, maybe movies as well. Doug said as much in the intro. So while the much anticipated new season of this show is looming right around the corner, we thought it the perfect time to throw the current hit Yellowjackets into the Sea View Circle mix.
And to our existing Sea viewers, don't get worried. We will return to the season 2 of Knots Landing very shortly. And in fact, we've got Abby Ewing coming up, so there's going to be a lot of real good stuff there. But the Yellowjackets season 3 premiere is about a month away, so we figured time is of the essence.
That doesn't give us a lot of time to recap and review the existing 19 episodes of Yellowjackets from season 1 and season 2.
No, it doesn't, but we're going to be doing something a little bit different in our efforts to kind of play catch up.
In this first podcast of our season 2, we are going to be unveiling our 20 favorite things about Yellowjackets season 1.
These are a few of my favorite things.
Yes, so this is going to be 10 things from Doug and another 10 things from me. We kind of broke it down as like one favorite thing per episode, but here's a little caveat about that because, we wanted to make sure that there's at least 20 favorite things from the season. So as we were writing our notes after rewatching these episodes for like the third or fourth time, we didn't discuss what we wrote down. So the conversation should be fresh. And then in that sense, if he has the same favorite thing as me, well, then we want to find something else that we can talk about for the episode as well. So it might be more like, 57 favorite things.
I have a feeling it's going to be about 57 because that was kind of hard to pin down as I was watching because it's so good.
It really is so good. Multi-layered, so many facets, right? So many things going on, obviously with the two storylines. I did want to say a little word about sort of the trajectory of the series. As right now we're going to be covering season 1 in this first little recap, our favorite things, but we're not going to really spend too much time theorizing about the future, certainly not about season 3 at this point. We're going to pretty much focus on what is known in season 1. Obviously, we know that this show has a huge, major, crazy fan base. The citizen detective storyline that kind of goes in season 2, it comes right out of all of these crazy viewers like us, maybe, but we're not on Reddit. All you guys are on Reddit. You guys have all these crazy theories and the threads just go on and on and on and on. I'm just here to tell you, we are not reading those necessarily. I'm not saying I've never been on there. I certainly have to do some investigation on certain things, but we're not going to spend so much time doing that in this particular podcast right here. Right now, we're just talking about the favorite things, right? So, for example, lingering questions, going down wormholes about who the pit girl is. We're not going to do that. I mean, do you have a theory who the pit girl is? I do, but in my opinion, it doesn't really even matter. I know everybody was so focused on that when this first season came out, but to me, the pit girl was always more like emblematic of where this story's going, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So in that first scene, you see that dramatic thing happen to this poor woman. It's crazy that someone would do that. But then you flash to the current day and it's the soccer team and they're playing on the field. It's meant to show the juxtaposition. In a way, it doesn't really matter who that is. It's just meant to get you into the story. But actually, it does matter, right?
Oh, I think it matters.
It does matter because
I got to tell you, though, I have been thinking about that
I have been
actually
thinking about it
more than I had
so now
even
we're
the
just
first
being
time
a hypocrite
watching it.
of what we said we weren't
Yeah,
going to do.
I'm lying. No, it's just, I must say, it is weird because as you watch that show, then you start thinking about it a little bit differently.
Well, there's that heart necklace, which keeps changing necks.
Yep.
But then, of course, there is what should be very factual information, which is how many bodies were actually on this plane when it left New Jersey and how many bodies were left after it crashed.
And that's always
Who
the really
is
weird
out there?
thing. It's weird because every time you watch that at the beginning, you're like, who's that person? I know we talked about some of these things privately, but
Yes.
I think that's what's kind of weird is that you don't really have an exact head count.
Well, if there has been anything that I am absolutely obsessed about, it is this particular topic. And in our next podcast for season 2, we are going to take a deep dive and break it all down as to the best of my ability. But for now, we are going to just keep things nice, cool, calm, and casual. And we are going to present our 20 favorite things, one from each episode. And shall we just dive in?
I guess I got to put glasses on for this. So I think from the onset here, I want to just clarify as well. Favorite thing is very loose.
Yeah.
Because, and when I made my notes on each episode too, it's like sometimes it's a favorite line. Sometimes it's a favorite mini storyline.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a favorite concept that's running
Right.
through.
Sometimes for me, it's
know.
a favorite aspect of the production. You
Yeah.
know, like, oh gosh, they really hit it doing this in this episode or whatever. So yeah, it's going to change. It's going to morph. And I think it should keep it pretty exciting. And I should say that, there's no way in an hour-long podcast, it'll probably be a little bit longer than an hour, I guess, that we're going to be able to hit every single plot point, every single character arc, every single beat, that makes this show so special and so crazy woven mystery. There's no way we're going to hit it all. So this is really for the fans who have already seen the show. There are no spoilers. I mean, it's all spoilers. You know what I mean? Because
If you
you've already
haven't
seen the
seen
show.
it.
Right? You've already seen the show.
Well, we
right?
hope you've seen this show. The recap.
If you haven't seen the show, you can catch up on Paramount Plus. The new season 3 is coming in just a few weeks. So season 1 and season 2 are available. I think season 1 is also on Netflix as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's available.
All right.
And that's on Valentine's Day.
It is.
So that'll be interesting.
The tagline is, "Eat your heart out."
Yes.
Do you know what the show's about if you haven't watched this?
You might have already given a spoiler. So I guess the thing I would say now, episode 1, favorite thing.
This is from the pilot.
I would say to you, in the pilot episode, I went for more the concept, okay? So my favorite thing about this pilot episode was that I really felt like I got to know who all these characters were. And it really set the tone for the whole series. And I think after watching it a couple times as well, it becomes even more apparent. You start noticing other little things. Like, for instance, you realize, like, Shauna's real smart, but she's kind of reckless. And you've got Thaisa can be kind of savage at times. I got
The patterns are already there.
Yeah, Natalie, I don't give a fuck. It's totally there. Misty, ruthless, cruel.
Oh, gosh. That shot of the mouse swimming in her pool and she doesn't do anything about it.
I mean, these things are set right from the very beginning, like even before they get on the plane. I mean, you kind of can see it all playing out in the high school scenes.
I have to say, I do think that this is, if there is such a thing as a perfect pilot, I think this is pretty darn close. For what you just said, the ability to introduce all of these characters in a short amount of time, get you invested in kind of their little relationships, right? Certainly the Jackie and Shauna relationship is very much established in this episode, and the betrayal is already apparent in this episode. And so that is obviously the largest story arc for the season. But then you also have the huge dramatic climax of the plane crash at the end, which just completely sucks you in. Oh, and let's not forget the opening sequence again, which is that pit girl sequence, which is just like, what the F is going on? And then there's those shots towards the end of that first feast, although you don't quite know, what's going on.
Right.
Right.
You have no idea at that point what
Yeah.
what that really is.
Right. So, yeah, talking about that cast, of course, the other great thing that is wonderful about this show is the casting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know
it's
instantly who is who.
pretty amazing
Yeah.
how they got people to really appear as their older self. I mean, especially the Shauna character, I think, is just like, it's hard to differentiate the two. Like, they seem like they're the same person. The way they talk, the mannerisms, the big eyes. And, of course, the younger actress who plays Shauna, she actually has blue eyes, so they put contacts
And the
in.
Natalie character is kind of the same way, too.
Gosh.
Because I like, even when you see, like, the physicality is just so, like, spot on.
Right.
And so it's like the looks are there, but yeah, the physicality and the way the delivery of the lines and everything, it's great.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
All right, so my favorite thing is the music, of course.
Yeah.
They call them needle drops these days. The young kids call them needle drops. But this one is jam-packed with amazing tracks from the 90s. I'm a 90s kid, 80s, 90s kid. I was in high school a couple years earlier than the Yellowjackets, but all of these tunes that are played were some of my jams. So I just want to give a shout out specifically to Shoop, which was played, a Salt and Pepper Shoop played in the locker room dance sequence, which I totally relate to because when I was in high school, we had this special like little theater arts event called Happenings, right? And basically what it was all the different theatrical departments, music, dance, theater, they did little performances throughout the school, throughout the high school. And we had an open air high school because I lived in Phoenix. And so one of the performances took us into the girls' locker room.
Oh, how ironic.
Where the dance team, or whatever, the dance group, performed Hanky Panky by Madonna in bath towels. I mean, it was pretty risque for high school, but that moment of seeing the girls doing Shoop is just like, that is so, to me, reminds me of the 90s, right? We also have, of course, Down by the Water, PJ Harvey, that was used so excellently in that scene where Natalie is having the LSD trip and she envisions she sees Misty and then the Antler Queen and all that moment. Of course, there's Smashing Pumpkins Today, which kind of brings us into the show. The setting, of course, being New Jersey, which you know a lot about. I have a question for you about that. Liz Phair, Supernova. Oh, this is one of my favorites, is the cover of Never Tear Us Apart by Paloma Faith, In Excess song. That's as the girls are getting ready, all the people, there's gentlemen too, also are played, as they're getting ready to take this flight. That song has so much emotional weight to it, and the lyrics are just heartbreaking when you think about it, you know? So whoever, I didn't write it down and I should have, whoever is the music supervisor on the show just really banged it out of the park. Awesome job setting the tone for this show, which has two timelines, one in the 90s and one in the current day.
Well, and when you talked about the locker room scene, to me, I felt like that was like such a great, true, joyful moment where you felt like, yeah, of course, this is how the kids would feel. They're getting ready to go to do their championships. And like, it's just such a great counterpoint to what happens.
Yes. Or how about the Good Vibrations, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, where they do the rally. It's just
really, it was fun. I really enjoyed that aspect. And, I remember for me in the 90s, I was listening to completely different types of music. I mean, I knew a lot of these songs, but like it is a little different for me. So I'm glad that you kind of went down that road to, because for me, I actually don't know all the tracks.
Well, Snow. Informer.
Yeah. No, I know. I know.
In the car
I know a fair amount of these. I worked in record stores in the 90s too. So it's like anything that was crossover, but like then I was getting all the like UK stuff too. Yeah. So not everything.
And there's so much more to come in other episodes. The Tricky, the Portishead. It's just really well done throughout. Okay, so before we move on to episode 2, I just want to say, shout out, Knots Landing here. Did you check when Shauna and Jeff are hooking up in the Jeep Cherokee? It's Mac's Jeep Cherokee.
Oh, yeah, I knew that. Yeah. It was in the very 90s kind of thing. Did it have the paneling on it too? Yeah. Oh, wow, cool.
I'll put the screenshot up.
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
So now it's less of a concept. It's more about a line.
Okay.
And for me, it was, I'm looking for an armoire. I just love that whole storyline of Shauna and Jeff and the whole thing after going to the marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor is saying that, yeah, maybe you guys should try some role playing to spice up your marriage. And it was just so funny to see how unsexy that was, like, oh, I would like to buy this so-and-so. And Melanie Linsky's delivery of this is just so funny. So
but, they ended up sexing it up eventually.
Well, I think what ends up happening eventually, Shauna gets turned on because of the Adam interaction.
Yeah.
And so then she's like, oh, I'm into this, and well, we'll talk about that for later, but
Right.
you do realize that she is the type of person that loves the danger.
Right.
The danger gets her off.
Right. I do think that even though at this point in the series we don't quite know fully who these characters are, and we're just sort of getting to learn who Jeff is really in this episode, and Warren Cole does such a great job in this role. But I do think that even in this situation, this role play, it's sort of sweet and heartbreaking. I mean, I always root for those two, even though they're beginning in high school, hiding this love child from Jackie and all this stuff. It's I don't know, it's very sweet. They've stuck it through. And so even in this moment, watching it again, I don't know, I really liked it. I really liked Warren a lot. I also really liked Callie, who is more introduced in this particular episode as well. She has a lot of really funny things.
Oh, she's such a
well.
brat.
Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah.
So that Sadecki family is crazy. They are out of control. My favorite thing really that I took away from this was a concept. It is the complex layering of different genres and also tones, right? So in one episode, you have so many things. There is comedy, as we just mentioned, with the Jeff and the Shauna, and also the Callie. There is the high drama and WTF of what Misty does at the end by destroying the black box from the plane. There's also severe creepiness from the Sammy character, right? Ty and Simone's son is just off the charts in this particular episode.
At that point, you just don't know where this is going, but
Right.
you're like, oh,
and
this
then
is creepy.
and then you even have this crazy gore from the chopping of Coach Ben's leg, and then also when Coach Martinez falls out of the tree and splats. It's pretty gory, and so I think that was a really good mixture of things where you're just like, what is going on here? It's definitely a dark comedy, but also, is it horror or is it supernatural with the Sammy? What is going on here? I like that. You don't really know which way this is going to go. All right, moving into episode 3, The Dollhouse. What was your favorite thing about this episode?
So I love the interactions between Misty and Natalie in the modern day. Natalie is just got so many good comebacks to her. Whatever Misty says, where she's being like, oh, well, you should be doing this and that and the other. What is it? I've thought about making cookies or, this kind of stuff. And she's like, oh, surprise me. Natalie's
yes.
Whatever.
It's the chocolate.
The chocolate. But generally speaking, that whole relationship is so volatile, but they're being brought back together again.
These two characters could have had their own TV series on their own, their own little
would have been
version.
like Laverne and Shirley.
Well, they mentioned, I think, in a later episode, Natalie says, oh, we're not going to be Rizzoli and Isles, which was this detective series starring 2 women. And they could certainly have had that show, So
totally.
All their little capers, all their little quips throughout the season are great, but specifically it builds in this particular episode. That was also my favorite thing as well. Although, because we don't want to have the same one, I cannot pass by this episode without talking about the amazing intro theme that begins in episode 3.
Oh,
right?
right.
No
That's
return.
right.
Here it is. The first time we're seeing this. I remember the first time we watched the show.
Yeah, we were like, what?
We were like, what is
And you
going
know what
on?
is weird about that intro is every time I watch it, I get more and more kind of out of it. But I mean, I've probably watched it, I don't know, 40 times at this point.
What they're doing with the editing is every episode they're adding in a couple more little bits and pieces from the episodes as they go. It's not like on Outlander where you see those same images every time they're from the future. This time they're sprinkling them in as you go along, which is a good way to kind of keep the surprises from.
Well, and it's kind of cool too because after you watch the show, through the seasons. Then when you go back and look at the intro, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's when that happens, and da 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 da. But
And
there still are some things that
things that are unanswered.
right, still unanswered things in the intro.
So the visuals are great,
but you better go to Reddit for all that stuff.
Absolutely. The visuals are great, but so is the song. The song is so like alt rock 90s. Like they did a really good job of capturing that flavor. And I think it's you sing it all the time. He sings this song literally all day, every day.
Yeah, pretty much. Where were we? Didn't we play that out at some point?
Oh,
too?
Definitely. I've played it.
Yeah,
for Halloween. Or
for Halloween,
like
I think it was for Halloween.
Anything else you want to mention from the Dollhouse?
So the only other thing would be the Thaisa storyline. If anybody out of all those characters carries this darkness, it's apparent that Thaisa has been seeing this figure without the eyes since an early age when her grandmother was getting ready to pass away, and like her grandmother saw it.
Right.
So there's something in her family line.
Well, we obviously haven't really discussed, what these girls do. Oh, by the way, did we say this is for people that haven't watched? Of course, you've watched it. They crash in a plane, right? They're going to nationals. They crash in a plane. They're stranded on the forest for a year and a half, and they have to eat each other. Okay, so but what's interesting about this, as you're seeing as the season 1 progresses, is you're seeing that these people had histories before they got there, which put this little mixture of people in a very precarious position. Then, of course, there's all these other things that are going on. We'll get to it. But so you have their existence before the plane crash, and then you have what they do out there, and you have their existence afterwards. That's what makes this show so amazingly intricate and layered. It's all this like past trauma, and the Thai character is really interesting because of that aspect. And I don't fully think we know what's really going on here, but I think the more we talk about it, you look at the 4 characters that are in season 1 as adults, really the only one that hasn't really changed so much is probably Misty, right? I mean, Misty's just
still the same.
She's been devious since day 1, but obviously the wilderness really changes the other 3 quite a bit. And so we'll get to that. I was just going to mention that there's a funeral in the very first shot of the very first scene of this episode, which is a really, really great time to see what we'll call our extra jackets. Okay. The head count that we were discussing earlier. And we'll get into it in the next episode covering season 2, because makes a little bit more sense to do it then. But I'm going to break it all down. We're going to use a screenshot from there. And then the only other thing I was going to say is, I don't know, I have a note here saying good story building from the scene of the girls leading to the lake. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I had something about that. You know how they were kind of dancing? Well, they were at the lake again, and it was with Travis taking his top off, and then all of a sudden
the girls are they're like, oh, is Travis cute?
It's like Travis is like hot, and then you got to remember, well, like he's pretty much the
only viable
one
guy.
of the viable guys at the moment. The other one is missing a leg,
right?
And
gay. They don't know
gay.
that. Okay.
Well, we'll talk about that.
But okay,
later.
I guess what I meant by this too, though, was also in taking the team from the destroyed plane to the lake, then that leads them to the cabin. And that, I think, was a really good way of seeing a movement so we can get to a place where so much can happen and they can be all in like this pressure cooker situation. And also so that they can be on a set, probably don't have to be outside all the time.
Yeah.
On location. Moving into episode 4, which is called Bear Down, I think the pacing is kind of slowed down, which in the last episode and in this one, it allows us to get to know the cast a little bit better. And I think it gives the actors a little bit more space to shine individually. So for me, it's the acting. The acting is my favorite thing here in this particular episode. Thaisa, played by Tawny Cypress, who, by the way, we met once, and she's
so cool.
Lovely. And she has this scene with the donor, right? At that party for her Senate candidacy. And that woman is so manipulative emotionally, and she's just so kind of like vicious in a way. And Tawny's facial expressions in that scene just really, really got to me. I think she really did a great job with that. I also, later on at the end, Shauna is given the news, I believe, from Misty that Travis has killed himself, or that Travis is dead. And there's this really wonderful moment in Shauna's face as well that I think was really good. Natalie, of course, played by Juliette Lewis as an adult, and then as a teen by Sophie Thatcher. Again, like we were saying, just there's so many great moments for both those actresses to shine. So I really made a note of putting that in there.
One of the things I noted there was what I loved really so much was Misty and the old lady talking. I think she said, I had a granddaughter or a niece or somebody. You remind me of her. Yeah. No one liked her either. I was like, yeah, all right. Oh. So that was really funny.
Misty gets it all from everybody.
Yeah,
the
she
hairdo.
gets it. Yeah, she got it all. The other thing that I remembered that kind of really caught my eye too is at that party where you're talking about Thaisa. You notice that she eats meat on accident. So I guess she was a vegetarian, and she she eats the meat, and she's like, it's triggered something in her. It's like, ooh, the taste of red meat.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting little.
I think at
piece.
that moment you don't quite know what that's going to mean. But right after it starts meaning something. It sucks her down this hole, which starts this whole ball rolling of what is happening currently, like in season 2, and I'm sure going into season 3. A couple other things I liked about this episode: Shauna and Adam's date.
Oh yeah,
at the mini golf was amazing. I thought that was really, really charming. Really,
jumping
really cute.
Jumping
off the bridge, that whole sequence.
Yeah.
All that stuff is really, really good. You can see the danger in that. You don't quite know who this Adam character is. You can see, though, there is some sort of electricity between the two. And it is nice to see the Shauna character smiling a little bit.
One thing I noticed was also the Travis and Natalie connection, how they had such very bad upbringings and how they bonded over this like tragic death thing, right? You know, they show that the Sophie Thatcher character, it shows how her father accidentally shot his face off, but like right before that, Natalie was, threatening him because he was trying to beat up the mother again. Yeah. So I mean, it was just like one of those things. So again, shows some more of these character traits that were started early on, and then of course we're following it later.
Yeah, and they do a good job. Also, I was going to mention the score, the background music. There's a couple of different themes that you keep hearing throughout the episodes. The one that I really love, I think is so haunting, is this like, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 notes. It's a piano. Not that one. That's okay. Great too. But this is that kind of the daunting piano. It's very simple and haunting, and it reminds me actually of the Alanis Morissette song "Uninvited," which they used as the promo for the season 1 before it even came out. It kind of has a similar vibe to that, and I don't know. It's just it's very beautiful and very like sets this tone. And I think it was used in that Natalie storyline. So it's a good job. All right, so Doug, I just have a question for you. Who do you think is the person that is sending the adult Yellowjackets the postcards? I don't want you to answer. We're not going to do that. We're not going to theorize on that right now.
I'm not going to think about it anyway.
However, I did want to use it as a segue to one of our segments in our show, our normal podcast show that we call Letters from the Sack.
Yes, as in cul-de-sac.
Cul-de-sac from Knots Landing. But this time for Yellowjackets, we're going to change it, and we're going to call it Postcards from the Edge.
From the Edge.
Right? Which is more like a season 2 reference, I suppose. But
isn't that a movie with Carrie Fisher and her mom?
Of course.
Right, okay.
Of course. Now, we don't have any for you today, actually, because you got to send us some postcards, right? So how do you do that, Doug?
So if you'd like to reach out to us,
send us a postcard from the Edge digitally.
Yes, you can. Well, for instance, you could get us on YouTube. That's one thing. You could send a message there, I guess. But ideally on Spotify, we're at Seaview Circle is our podcast.
And that's
SEEVIEW Circle. There's Instagram at Seaview Circle. And then we also have a Gmail, which is seeviewcircle@gmail.com. Again, SEEVIEW Circle. Your questions might be featured in a future Untying the Knot segment.
Doug, what is Untying the Knot?
Well, in the Untying the Knot, we take deep dives into a specific production aspect of the series, or perhaps provide a bio of fan favorite cast members. It's sort of our version of playing citizen detective.
Oh, so does that make you Misty and me Nat?
I feel very much like Misty.
Oh, okay. I'll be Nat.
Yeah.
Or how about between Misty and Walter?
I'd say I'm still Misty.
I'd say that's probably true. Yeah. Okay.
Especially with those cleaning products.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for today's Untying the Knot, what we are going to do is talk about filming locations. Listen, if you watch our Knots Landing coverage, you know we love to talk about film locations, right? So we are going to talk about all the film locations that we know of from season 1. And get this, we actually have been to several of them, and we'll go through them. Did you know that the pilot episode was mostly filmed in California?
I kind of knew that.
Yeah. In fact, we were recently in the Mammoth area, and we were reminded that those early scenes in the episode, and again, they appear later on at the end as well, of the pit girl, of that first feast, all of that was filmed up in Mammoth. And so we have a little video from our recent visit. We're going to roll that right now.
We are not in Vancouver. We are actually in the Mammoth, California area. That is where the pilot to Yellowjackets was filmed. I think only the character of Misty, actress Sami Hanradi, was there for those scenes. Obviously the pit girl scene was filmed there, and some other great scenes from the pilot. But this right here is giving me some serious Javi gets chased on the ice pond vibes. And I'm sorry, but I am not going out there.
I wonder what that shoot was like when they were first doing that. Like, what is this show going to be? Who is there? It fascinates me. Now, the rest of it, a lot of it was filmed also in California. The high school, which is actually a stand-in for Wisqiaq, New Jersey, which must be somewhere near Hoboken, because they do mention that in season 2, I think, that Adam Martin was an artist from Hoboken. So
Right,
I don't know how far Shauna would have had to drive for that. So, but that fictional high school actually is
John Marshall High School in Los Feliz.
Yeah, that's not too far.
Yeah,
from here.
I know I've driven past there.
Yeah.
So that looked familiar to me.
Right. And then Jackie's house is this beautiful, large white mansion. It was actually used also in True Blood as Marianne's mansion, and that is located in Pasadena. We haven't seen that one.
Is that one okay from the fires? Do we know?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's
It's San Marino, so it's a little bit much further south from the foothills. And then, of course, Natalie's rehab is in Malibu. That's near Latigo Beach. It's a large mansion there. It was also used in Westworld. That was the Delos mansion as well.
Okay, I remember that.
All right, now moving over to the rest of the season, they moved production after the pilot up to Vancouver.
Yes, and we were actually lucky enough that we went to Vancouver, I guess, was it not this summer, but the summer before.
Right,
and so
23.
we actually got to go to a few of these places and try to check things out. One of my favorite things was we had dinner at the Bricks and Mortar restaurant.
We did.
And that's where they did, quite a few scenes.
Yeah, there's those great scenes with Misty and that grandmother.
Yeah.
And then also Jessica Roberts was there.
Yeah.
And of course, Natalie and Kevin Tan were having their little date there, which I just think the guy who plays Kevin is so
He's cute.
He's so cute.
And the food is great. The drinks were great.
Amazing. The dessert
service was
great.
Awesome. Really great experience.
That's a very special place. If you are ever in Vancouver, it's housed in a building from 1912. The interiors are beautiful. That is Bricks and Mortar. They have the sign in the actual episode. We also stopped by Thaisa and Simone's condo.
Yes,
and
which is right in the middle of Gastown.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird little area too, because it's a lot of sketchy stuff going on around there, but it's very super touristy.
But the Gasworks buildings are beautiful. It's the historic district of Vancouver, and it's all these just beautiful brick buildings.
Yes.
So we visited that. We also visited
the 2400 Motel.
Oh, right.
That was really easy to access because it's right on a main street. It definitely was way busier there than it looked like when they did the filming.
You're
when
led to believe that it's like rural.
Yeah, and it's
something, but
center of town.
Yeah, and there's condos by there and everything, but it's pretty much looks exactly the same. They were doing a little bit of refurbishment, I remember, on the roof, but even the front office is there, and if you peer in, you can see it's the same office they used in season 2 when Misty goes in to talk to the to the manager.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And then we also went to the actual location where the cabin is from season 1. This is actually in a
It's a paintball place,
yeah,
right?
it's like a paintball, course, and it's called Panther Paintball, and it's in a town called Surrey in British Columbia, which is like kind of just over the border, really, from the U.S., Washington.
It's on your way into Vancouver.
Yeah, and we stopped there. We were hoping that we could get in there, but it was closed on the day that we were there.
I think it's only open on the weekend or something.
Yeah.
It's like one of those.
Yeah.
So. But we'll definitely, if we go back to Vancouver, we're going to go there.
I would love to see that. Now, of course, in the season 2, I think they recreated that on a soundstage
Right.
with all the snow. But for season 1, it was there. And then the lake is in a town, I think, to the east of these two locations, Vancouver and Surrey. I think the lake is called Stave Lake, which is really, really pretty. We didn't get to go there. It was too far, but we'd like to check that out. It's very nice. Moving into episode 5, Blood Hive. I have to say, this is one of my favorite episodes of the season. I think it is jam-packed with so many good little morsels, and there's a lot of dynamic kind of settings, right? There's Natalie and Misty at that Chinese restaurant when they're addressing that other citizen detective. That's really great.
The memory sticks.
Yeah. I love, of course, the rave scene, the Halloween rave scene with Adam and Shauna and Callie. I think that was really, really fun. Reminded probably you and me both of like our time living in New York. But I think that the pacing between the two, the editing between the two storylines is just really, really tight and really, really good. I gave this probably one of my highest BROWMETER ratings of the season. And we'll get to that at the end of this episode, what our overall brow rating score is for season 1 of Yellowjackets. But it did lose a little points for me with the Coach Ben boner. That did lower down the
boner lowered
just
it.
a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Ooh, just a little bit.
That's 90 song.
Yeah, I know. Of course I know that.
But I will say my favorite thing about this episode were some of the lines. I'm going to go through them quickly here.
Yeah.
There was the moment when Shauna said to Callie, when they were talking about their Halloween costumes, and Shauna said, the people that matter would know who Daria is. Because Callie's like, nobody's going to know who Daria is, right? That's
right.
their Halloween costume. Very good, very good. Then later on, there's a really good moment between Shauna and Callie. Again, this is after they've returned home from the rave, and Callie has a hangover from the Molly, and she's threatening Shauna about telling Jeff about her affair with Adam. And then, of course, Shauna just goes right into her old Shauna mode and starts threatening her back. And basically, she says to Callie that, do you know what's going to happen if we break up? You're going to have to spend the weekends with your father, and there's nothing sadder than a divorced dad. And he's going to be asking you for dating advice, and all the girls will be your age, which was great.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Then the best part really is is when Misty's trying to call Natalie and her phone contact for Misty is don't pick up.
Yeah, I agree. That was great. And then there's also the thing about, in that scene where they had the memory sticks as well in the restaurant, Natalie said to Misty, you and that guy seem to be a great match as well. It's another one of those one-liners where it's
You'd
just
be
like,
perfect for each
you'd
other.
be perfect for each other. But the thing I really liked in this episode too, which I thought was like the sickest thing, was the Halloween section where Misty's got the kids coming in to take the Halloween candy from the old lady, and then she unplugs the machine so it flatlines, and they get they scream and run away. That was really that shows you how
sick and twisted,
sick and brutal she is. She really is just over the top.
Now, of course, we can't go through this episode without mentioning the seance, which is such a big part of this episode. And I do want to mention that something I noticed this time watching it, you really can see that this supernatural element is coming in here. Obviously, Lottie starts speaking French, and she's there's this camera angle that shows that it's whooshing into the attic while they're doing this seance, and she breaks their head on the window. But there's also the moment where she says, it wants, and then someone asks, what does it want? And she turns to Shauna and says, it's already in you. which, she says that it wants blood, right? I mean, that's what the translation is. I think that Jackie says whatever she's saying, it wants blood. But actually, if you take it another way, when she says to Shauna, it's already in you. Yeah, it could be the thirst. It could be the thirst to kill. It could be the thirst for blood. But it's the baby. The baby's already in her. It wants the baby.
It wants the baby.
And I don't think we caught that really the first time.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because we always assumed that Callie was Shauna's baby born in the wilderness.
But then when you start doing the math, when we start doing the math, you're like, well, no, if it's the 25th anniversary,
right?
Callie's 17.
She's too young. Yeah.
So
then as it goes on, and we think, who is this baby? Who's this baby? Who's this? Where'd the baby go? And then you realize, no, the baby didn't make it.
So this episode 6, what is this one titled?
Saints.
It's the Lottie storyline. We really start to get the gist of what's going down with Lottie.
It's a definite turning point for this character as we see those visions that she's having. Of course, we know from earlier on that she needed medication in her daily life to control these visions, right? There's that car accident where she...
Right, they start the backstory of with her parents and how she basically had this vision 2 seconds before she screamed, and then the parents didn't pull forward, and then there's this like truck that comes through and crashes and kills
but the parents don't agree on these special abilities that their child has, and so they're suppressing it with the medication. And of course, once the plane crashes and she's only expected to be there for a week, the medication runs out, and so now this is opening up the Lottie to take in what's happening out there in the wilderness, and there is seemingly something happening. The underground bunker sequence is so it's really enigmatic. That is
very trippy.
That is another really burning question that we still have. I think we're starting to see what's happening with that, and I think in season 3 we're going to really see, but it's and then really interesting.
Well, and the fact that she has the several visions, right? When she's doing the baptism to Laura Lee, and Laura Lee's face just kind of goes up in flames, and it's just like, so that's obviously a vision of the future.
Right. I mean, it could have been interpreted at that moment that it was like a halo, right? Mm-hmm. Because Laura Lee is sort of the spiritual guide for her, but obviously, as we know, that's not what ends up happening. So I would agree that Lottie situation was definitely a standout in this scene, because up until that point, she almost had as little of a role maybe as like the Mari or the Aquila characters, who, when you watch it again, you realize, oh gosh, they're there all the time, but they just don't have those like relationships, that really are mattering is in the plot lines going forward. So this is really the first time that Lottie is like mattering, and she obviously will as we go forward. I noticed that this again was kind of a quieter episode. My note here really is about the Shauna and Jeff relationship, and I've already kind of touched upon that, where it's just not a perfect relationship. It's probably like a lot of relationships that start in high school, where they have kids and they just kind of like stay together. Obviously they love each other and they're like survivors, really, these two. And as it progresses, their bond will be very obvious. But I just thought it was a really touching moment, that scene in the car. I also noticed the throat singing. You mentioned it earlier, that throat singing. It's like Bjork almost. Like, I don't know if it's the Vespertine album. I don't know if you saw that tour where she had the chorus of throat singers. I think they're from Greenland, and that's probably tying into wherever this plane crash is supposed to be. Maybe, it probably is supposed to be Canada. So I'm wondering if that is some sort of native people's influence there. I thought that was great. Oh, and one of my favorite things about this episode really was the chemistry between adult Natalie and Kevin Tan. When they go to Kevin's son's soccer game, and it's heartbreaking, like Natalie's response to seeing these kids playing soccer and then giving the advice, and then the guy like bangs out of the park, and then there's this weird moment. Do you remember there's this weird moment? It's like, I don't know what that is supposed to mean. I still don't know, but the chemistry between the two adults I think is really beautiful, and he really could have been someone good for adult Natalie, but
she was too hung up. She's reckless and too hung up on Travis.
Too hung up on the
damage
Travis situation.
And damage.
Yeah, totally. There's a great scene with Natalie and Travis also in the plane, I believe, where they're talking about their sexual pasts, right? And this kind of double standard where a guy's allowed to have, a promiscuous sexual past, but then a girl is not. And I think
And
that
especially in high school.
right.
Oh,
And
God.
I mean, trust me, in my high school in the 90s, people talked about
Oh, yeah.
things. And so I think that was very relatable. And I think it was a really important thing to include in this show, which is a female driven cast. I thought it was really great. So good job.
We also had started seeing in this episode the fact that Thaisa is like eating dirt at the crash site. That's like the beginning of that.
Yeah.
And she has the dirty fingers. And
Right.
then doesn't she start at home? She's like eating her hand.
Yeah.
So like it's that whole thing is now starting to take off. The
This
flesh.
sleepwalking.
Yeah, sleepwalking.
And this not being aware of these lapses in time. It's other Thai. It's
other
Thai.
I think at this point we still don't know
Yeah.
it's other Thai.
Right.
But then later on it becomes very apparent
Yeah.
it's other Thai.
Yeah.
So then in this episode, there's quite a bit going on. It's
Yeah.
fast paced, to say the least. This car chase with the money, and we don't know who it is. It's very much like an action. It's almost like it shifted gears a little bit, the show. The pacing
It's
was...
a standout moment for sure in
Yeah.
this episode. Set to Firestarter by Prodigy.
Yeah.
You
It was fast.
Natalie on the move is just so fun to watch. So I would agree that was definitely a highlight. Also, I don't know if that was necessarily my favorite either. I think it might have been the first time I watched it.
Yeah, maybe.
But now you see kind of other things. But yeah, I will say that sequence with Natalie, Ty, and Shauna in the car waiting for the drop, and then also going after the guy, it has some great moments, just character moments with those three actresses. And I think, again, Juliette Lewis is just so heartbreaking in some of those moments. She says to Shauna, "Oh yeah, I'm seeing Kevin Tan." Well, that's not the words she uses, by the way. But she says, "I'm seeing Kevin Tan," and then Shauna's like, "Oh, well, isn't he married? That doesn't sound like a very good thing to get into." And then Nana's like, "I think it is. I'm okay with it," or something like that.
I'm okay with
and
it.
I thought that was really kind of heartbreaking, and also showing who the character is now. And then later on, this is after the attempt to find out who this person is has failed, and she kind of breaks down and she's like, you guys all think you have this perfect life, you have your spouses and your children, but you're just as messed up as I am, and you won't admit it. And I thought that was really, really good. So I'd say that acting from, again, Juliette Lewis was probably my favorite thing in
probably
this
the
episode.
best acting in the episode. Agree.
And then you notice, I think, is it Thaisa who says to Shauna, cut Natalie some slack. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
Right. And I remember that and going like,
What does this mean? I think, well, I don't want to talk about it so much right now, because
I'm sure we're going to find out in season 3.
In season 2, I feel like there's a moment where I'm like, oh, is this what she's talking about? We'll talk about it later.
Now, here was something that I liked, though, too, that I didn't really notice necessarily the first couple times we watch this. We're in the cabin, and we have Shauna touches the little wolf figurine. Did you ever notice that? Kind of like that, but that's not a wolf.
Yeah, this is
but,
a quatty.
She touches the wolf figurine, right? And then shortly after that is when the ladies, it's Ty and Van
Right.
and Misty, they go out to leave.
This is the episode No Compass, where they try to head south and find help.
So there's this thing with the necklace, which is the bone necklace. I felt like they were tying in the supernatural thing with the Shauna and the connection with the touching of the wolf, and then the necklace, which they thought was protection, but then in a way is not protection.
Right.
And it gets put on Van, and then, of course, she gets attacked by a wolf.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of real weird, eerie stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see if those connections kind of
Continue that same kind of
later
pattern.
too.
Let's talk about the wolf for a second. That was carved by young Javi and given to Shauna. Obviously, I think Javi kind of has a crush on young Shauna. And there's that scene earlier in the season where they're sitting on a log or something over the river, and Shauna's showing him how to write in a journal, and he wants to use it to draw or something. He claims that he wants to do art. So you can see why. I don't know if you know this, but during season 1, people thought that Adam was Javi. Adam was the adult Javi, which I never quite saw it then, because I was like, well, don't you think Shauna would know? Like, would he get plastic surgery? Like, he would know. Like, he just would know. Even though the guy was young, he wouldn't have changed enough, you know? So I never really bought it, but you can see why people thought that season 1, because the editing, a lot of times the way they show the character's connection is they show the young person and then they show the adult person,
so maybe
the same character.
it's leading you down that road.
They did that with Shauna and Javi, I think once, that you know, those two, the Javi to the Adam once. So you can see why people would think that. And you would think that also because he is into art.
Yeah.
And he is into, you know, this kind of stuff, and there's already an attraction there. You can see why that would be the case. I liked in this episode there were some pop culture references, which we don't get a lot of. We do a lot of this in the Knots Landing coverage, but this one we don't hear a lot. But you did hear pop culture reference for Old Spice, right?
Oh, yeah, Old Spice.
Natalie and Travis. Also, I think, is it Van who mentions the musical Cats, which was good. Hello Kitty is referenced somewhere in there, which I think is cool. And then the only thing I want to mention was the back and forth scenes with Shauna and Jackie. So Jackie is a character who like came in gangbusters in episode 1, and we are huge Ella Purnell fans. She's definitely a divisive character amongst the characters, right? A divisive person amongst the characters. And the scenes here, I believe in this scene, are is the reveal that Shauna is pregnant, and Jackie's wondering why her best friend wouldn't tell her and hold this information.
Yeah.
And then, of course, she's asking her to spill the name of who it is, and she lies and says it's Randy. And so these scenes are, I think,
she's trying to put together the timeline that doesn't make sense.
Right, exactly.
All that kind of stuff.
So I think it was a really good kind of connection of where this is going to go as we continue. Would you like to start your comments?
I would love to
episode
start.
8, Flight of the Bumblebee.
Flight of the Bumblebee, my favorite here. I always love the comedy. Mm-hmm. So my favorite scene is the scene where Misty can see that Natalie has bought some Coke, and she's watching it on the little surveillance,
diffuser, the little owl diffuser.
Owl surveillance, diffuser. And so she runs over and she breaks in the door, and she pushes Natalie away, and she snorts all the cocaine, and it's like, and then there's a big like pile of dust. So it's like, of course, Natalie's like really pissed. It's like, that's like $300 worth of Coke. And of course, Misty's just like, she snorted it all up. It's like, does she even know what that's going to do to her?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So to me, I just thought that was such comedy gold. And that's why I love this show so much, in the fact that, yes, it's such a dark comedy-ish. I mean, it's not all comedy, but there's certainly great elements to it. So they play a good balance.
That's what I wrote. I basically wrote the audacity of this show to have one single episode where a character is mauled by a wolf and then has her face repaired on screen with someone sewing it very graphically, in the same episode where that happens, right? Mm-hmm. Where Misty goes in to push the Coke out of Natalie's mirror. And then in the same episode where Jessica Roberts strangles Caligula the bird, right? And then also in the same episode where Laura Lee and that poor teddy bear go off and fly and explode into the air. It's like, wow.
I know. And it was so much excitement when the plane took off. Everybody's like, yay, she's flying. I mean, I guess I remember that really shocked me when that happened. I was like,
yeah. And
wow.
I think, again, there's this element of this nature spirit. We don't know what this is. Maybe they call it the darkness, where they don't want these people to leave. You cannot leave. Something is always going to pull you back, and it certainly pulled her
we don't
back.
want to get into the whole nature spirits thing.
Yeah.
We could if you want to. I mean, many people believe in these nature spirits. I'm a believer, but I won't get into it right now.
Well, there's the whole concept of animism in the Hindu faith. There's so much of that. So, yeah, and there's other spiritual issues going on here, too. We haven't even mentioned Cabin Daddy and the symbol yet and all that stuff. So we'll eventually, I'm sure we'll get to it. We'll hit on it.
Daddy.
My favorite scene, though, of this episode actually has to be the quieter one between Shauna and Ty. It's the sleepover on Callie's bed. And it's just this moment, this opportunity for the adult Ty and Shauna to have like a healing moment of their shared trauma, and also to have some laughs, right?
Isn't that where Taissa reveals to her that she's been sleepwalking again too, and she needs to be somewhere.
Right.
She needs to have somebody like check on her.
Right.
And of course Shauna is there.
And Shauna reveals that she's having an affair with Adam.
Yeah.
And talking about how he makes her feel it. And then Ty says, "Oh, I know what that feels like. I know that." She's like, that's trouble. You know,
Right.
That's trouble. When you feel like you're it, something's not going to go well, which of course is foreshadowing, right? It's like when you have that like craziness, it's something that cannot really be contained or controlled. It's much better to have like this safe bet, you know? That's a really good scene. Again, if only to see Thaisa smile, to see Tawny Cypress smile. It's just
Because
really,
most of the
really
time she's like
wonderful.
this.
And then, of course, again, I have to say, Juliette Lewis, this downward spiral throughout the second half of this season. She's on the floor. She's snorting up whatever's left of the Coke. She has the face mask on and she's calling up the bank or whatever. She is flipping out of control. And Juliette Lewis just totally raises the bar of the acting for this cast. I mean, they're all great, but she is just amazing.
She's amazing. She's really amazing.
All right, friends, we are here at one of the most talked about episodes of the season. It is episode 9, Doom Coming. This one is,
great.
This could be basically just like its own movie. Like anybody could watch this and it would be entertaining because so much is going on. Obviously, we have them in the beginning talking about, having the concept of the Doom Coming, which I thought was really funny. But then we also have, I think it's right off the gate, don't we have Shauna murdering?
Yeah.
Murdering
Shauna
Adam.
Murders Adam. Because
This is all because of glitter, by the way.
Right. She thinks that he's the one
and
that's
stolen journals, though. And stolen
right.
journals.
She thinks he's the one that's been blackmailing her after all.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have any answers about
Yeah.
his answers about him going to Pratt or whatever. She checked into it.
Well, and then he also had the book about the crash, and he had
a magazine
about the Yellowjackets.
Yeah.
I will say that this, again, we talk about this sometimes on the Knots Landing coverage, where there's always like a scene where you're like, okay, this is written a little bit out of normal patterns for characters. Like, he was suddenly very cagey, and he wasn't really like that before, and so it does throw suspicion on this Adam character. We still don't really know where this dude comes from, to be honest. He had that tattoo on his back with the mountains, which a lot of people on Reddit were suspecting. Maybe he was actually connected to the cult that comes into play in season 2, and maybe that's the case. We still don't really...
Yeah, we don't know yet.
No. Yeah, so that's crazy right then and there. And I think for me, one of the things that is just so wild is the aftermath with Shauna and Jeff, where, he reveals to her that he's the one who was blackmailing them to get $50,000 to save his furniture shop. And then you could just see the look on her face drop. Like, oh my God, I just killed that guy for no reason.
Yeah. And then the other thing that was real funny about that kind of scenario is that she also reveals that there's no book club. And he's like, no book club?
Yeah.
Like, he's really upset.
That is, probably the best line of the season,
Yeah.
right? It's made T-shirts. It's been on
No book club.
on mugs. It really is funny. And because she has to reveal that she's had an affair. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Why would she get to point A, point B from point A, or point Z from point A, whatever, to the point of murdering him, basically.
But, I would say to you this. I liked that scene between both of them, too, because at this point in the series, now you really realize these two, they're made for one another because they're both so on the edge, really. Like, they just are taking chances that nobody else is going to take.
Clearly, Jeff really does love Shauna. I mean, he must have always loved, he says it, this is who we are. We have always kept secrets, even from the get-go in the backseat of that car in episode 1. And so the fact that he's willing to take the rap is just, anybody else would be like, what? But he's willing to do it. He's willing to take the rap, say that he killed Adam because he was having an affair with his wife. And it's just absolutely insane. And I love the line also, another one that Shauna says. She gives him whiskey or something, or a beer, I can't remember, and she's like, oh, sorry, we're out of Xanax.
Yeah.
Oh, so good, so good. So yeah, that to me was a really standout part of the episode, in an episode that is so much bigger than
there's so much action-packed stuff on here. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And of course, then we get into this whole stuff. If we go back to the older storyline, the 90s storyline, they got the foreshadowing with Lottie says something like, we're going to eat soon.
Right.
Which I was like, directly like, Oh.
So now
okay.
this is in the midst of the mushroom-induced haze that these kids are all experiencing on behalf
Right.
of Misty. She had the mushrooms and she left them out. Did she do that on purpose, or did
I don't
she?
think so. She said she was going to give them to the coach.
That's right. She's going to give
And
them
then what
specifically to
happened
the coach.
is it Mari?
Yeah,
is that
Mari
who's
puts them
cooking?
in the stew.
Mari was like, "Oh, great! I got some mushrooms." She sticks them in the stew. So I was like, but there is that point where Misty sees that,
Yeah.
and she's just like,
She doesn't stop it.
She doesn't say to anybody.
So yeah, Natalie and Coach Ben go off to have some real booze, right?
Yeah.
That Natalie has found. But before that, I thought it was interesting because when the people start coming in for the Doom Coming ceremony, you see Van and Ty come in at, kind of announcing themselves officially as a couple. And if you notice, Coach Ben like congratulates them and says, I think it's really great what you're doing. I thought it was interesting for him to say that because he's held his sexuality back from everybody, but you would think he wouldn't necessarily say that. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, he later comes out, obviously, to
Well, he starts.
Natalie
Yeah, in
and
that
to
episode,
Misty.
he shouts to the forest,
Yeah.
"I'm gay! I'm gay! I'm gay!"
Yeah.
So, and because she called him out on it anyway,
Right.
but she knew, and that she said something like, "You never look at any of her breasts."
Yes.
So like, oh, okay, I guess that's what it is.
Now, let's go back to the Doom Coming itself, because this is another wonderful place for us to find some extra jackets. They're all there. But the thing I thought was maybe not so great about this was that the quality of their boutonnieres and their headdresses and the masks that Ty makes. I mean, come on. There is no way these girls
Yeah, they were
or guys
really,
could
like,
make any of this stuff.
High quality woven leather eye patch.
It looked like something like out of what's that store? Anthropology.
Is that even still around?
I don't know, but it's like upscale stuff that was really like shabby chic or like made from natural elements. So it's beautiful to look at. It is. And for a moment like in a show like this, you want to see some beauty, I guess, but it was a little over the top. One thing I did like though was the use of Kiss from a Rose by Seal. I think that was the absolute perfect choice for a slow dance song in that era. And I thought it was really, again, charming and beautiful how they sang it a cappella
Yeah,
first.
they sang it a cappella.
And then it swelled into the actual tune as they're dancing. And I think it was a really, one of these things that often happens in a TV show or a movie where they give you a false sense of security. Everything's going so well.
Everything was great until it wasn't going great. Then, of course, everything changes and they start getting real trippy and things start, what is it? Doesn't Natalie say something like, I think she poisoned all of us?
Yes,
And it's
yes.
like, woo, everything
Yes,
gets
yes.
like stretched, tripped out,
Yeah.
colors change. Yeah,
So
it's
things
fun.
just completely go off the rails, obviously. And again, I think Lottie really is the instigator here when she says that, we won't be hungry for long. And then Jackie, who's the only person who did not take the soup, she's the only one who did not eat, so she is not tripping at all. She obviously has an agenda. She wants to sleep with Travis today because she is not going to die a virgin when Shauna's already... Wait, does she know at this point?
I think she knows.
She knows
at this point. I
that
think
Jeff,
she's read.
Yeah,
I
she
think
read
she's
the
read the journals, Shauna's journal.
So she is pissed
She's
off.
pissed off.
She's got an agenda, and so she takes Travis, and they have that little scene up in the attic. And then when they come back down, all hell absolutely breaks loose. I must say, for Travis's first time, okay, he
Yes.
certainly had a first time, didn't he?
He sure did.
I wonder if the extra jackets who weren't there felt left out, that they didn't get to participate with Travis.
I don't know. We'll have to ask them.
Yeah, so much going on in the scene. I think the line that really is driven home and hits hard is when Natalie comes back and everybody's like, what's going on? What are you doing? Shauna has the knife up to Travis's neck and Javi's run off. She tells him to run, in a crazy voice, and they're all howling through the woods. When all is said and done, the moment that's really crazy is when Lottie says to Jackie, you don't matter anymore. It's almost as if Lottie's saying, oh, well, we are going to eat you at that moment. It's like, that's her vision. Now, of course, her vision was that we weren't going to be hungry for long, was because this bear magically comes out of the woods in the next episode. But, ultimately, this is the end of Jackie as well. It's really crazy.
Well, and
moment.
I'd say the other thing that has been kind of going on through the whole season is that you assume that Jackie is the leader because she's kind of like the leader of the soccer team. But it becomes pretty much apparent that Shauna is pretty much the leader for the most part. I mean, Lottie, or at least there's like a little tug of war. But
Tie a little bit too. at
yeah,
times,
but certainly Jackie is not.
Jackie is not the leader once they
She's
get
not cut
to
out
the
for
wilderness.
this at all. She's
No.
just not. It ain't for her. She needs to go back to prep school.
Yeah.
So the episode 10, what's it called? It's
This
Latin.
is Latin. It is Sic Transit Gloria Mundi.
Do you know what that means?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
You know me,
good.
I look
Okay,
this
great.
stuff up, right?
All right, look it up.
So what it means, translation is, thus passes the glory of the world.
Oh, okay.
I believe it is obviously in reference to Jackie. In modern times, I guess they say it also refers to, like, say, the decline or downfall of something that once was great and is no longer.
Right.
So that certainly makes sense, again, in reference to Jackie. What was your favorite thing about this episode?
Well, I mean, there is so much in here again, but one of the things that I found really kind of crazy was, well, the girls in general doing the crime scene. They're so capable. I mean, what, you got the one point Shauna's got that Hamilton Beach
It's just like
carving knife.
It's just like riding a bike, she says.
Yeah, it's
which
just
I
like
think
riding
is funny if you watched our Knots Landing coverage.
Yeah.
This is very familiar territory for this character, and it's really like he's just picked up where he left off when he stopped drinking. It's like, what do they always say? Riding a bike. You can't ever forget how to ride a bike. What's the saying?
Yeah, you never forget how to ride a bike.
Something like that.
It's like riding a bike.
It's like riding a bike.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just right.
Drinking is like riding a bike.
Drinking is like riding a bike. It's just like riding a
It's
bike.
just like riding a bike, a really disgusting effed up bike, I think is what she says.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And so she's carving the body up. No big deal. She's just like nonchalant.
And Natalie, too, really.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah.
She's just kind of like, whatever.
And then, of course, we even had with Misty, too. She's capable of going to the funeral of this woman because she's got the ulterior motive. What she's basically doing is she's disposing of the head and the hands. And so she's like meeting the family and just like, oh, you know, she was like a mother to me. And like, they're all kind of like, are you sure you got the right person? She
And
wasn't
then
speaking.
later in the same episode, she also drugs poor Jessica Roberts
Right.
with the fentanyl-laced cigarettes. And poor Jessica Roberts.
And finally lets her go.
Yeah.
But then Jessica's like,
that was
driving
crazy.
and I mean, we don't know
remember-
if she's dead or not.
Okay,
though,
here's
do
the
we?
thing. Here's
Do
the
we know
thing.
she's
I
dead?
believe in season 2, they do mention that like Misty murdered Jessica Roberts, but I have hope. I have hope that
Who
she
said that?
There's a scene later on in the season where they're all at the cult. And they all talk about everything that's been going on. They catch up.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
All right. Well, we'll
we're
see.
watching season 2 now, to catch up again as well. But I really love the actress who plays Jessica Roberts.
Yeah, I like her
Her name is Rekha Sharma. I think she is just so energetic. Like the energy that comes across in her performance, even though she's strapped onto a bed, is just like electric. I want to know more. I want more of her. And
See, that's always the problem. Sometimes it's like the same thing with the Adam character.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted more.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think they could have stretched it out another episode.
Right.
Not kill him so quick.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right,
I don't
right.
know. It's just the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
they leave you wanting a little bit more.
Yeah.
So she is somebody. I would love to see more of her.
I'm really hoping they figure out, the creators, Barton, actually figure out a way to not have her be dead. I mean, it wouldn't be like Misty to not go check on the car to make sure that she had died. Like,
Yeah.
she would do that, so probably she's dead.
I do find it interesting that we still have Ella Purnell, even though she's not going to be around. She will still come back.
Yeah.
And so maybe in that way, maybe they can do some of that with some of these other characters too.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if any of those people are booked in for season 3 or not. I guess we don't know anything yet.
Yeah,
do we?
don't
We
really know. We don't actually really try to like look too much at the spoilers. We did watch the trailer, I will say, but I do have maybe like one small little theory in regards to that. But I'm trying not to see too much of it. We want to be surprised. One of my favorite things about this episode, I think the first time I saw it, was certainly the reveal of Ty's basement altar.
Oh, yeah.
Which had Biscuit's head and his heart and the Sammy's doll all busted up. I mean, that was such a shocking moment, and the way that's edited right to the moment when she learns that she's won the Senate seat, and that smile on Tawny Cypress's face is just so like crazy. That was the moment for me the first time I watched it. Now, watching it the fourth time, it has a little bit.
No, you know what other scene I really loved in here too is I just think it's so great when they get to the high school reunion, and then the doors open and it's the slow motion, and they're just like the superstars. There's the three, and then Misty jumps in. So it's like the 4 Yellowjackets are just, it's like, that's a really dynamic scene.
It is fantastic.
Yeah,
really
it's fun.
Great job. Really fun. Of course, the Allie character comes in again. We haven't seen her since the first episode, and she has this crazy Jersey
now
accent,
she has a really
even though
thick
the
Jersey
child
accent.
did not have one. But whatever. She's a scene stealer, obviously, and it's really fun to see her try to like play up her importance in this.
She talks like this with the Yellowjackets. I was part of the Yellowjackets.
That's another great little moment cutting between the two storylines where they're talking about Jackie, and this is right at the same moment that Jackie and Shauna are having this major showdown in front of everybody in the cabin when they're eating the bear meat, and of course Jackie would not join in on the blessing that Van requested from Lottie. Anyway, this is a great opportunity for us to see again the extra jackets, the team photos. I try to get some screenshots. We'll talk. about that.
In the trophy cabinet.
Yeah,
right?
but that was a great sequence, and of course.
Cabin Daddy just flew over.
I don't know what that was, but I mean, maybe it's the
It could be the
wilderness.
It's the spirit of the wardrobe up in the attic.
Maybe it's Cabin Daddy up there.
Cabin Daddy. We have an attic. It's kind of a partially finished attic.
It looks like the attic in Yellowjackets if you look at it from one.
Well, a little bit. Maybe more like the flowers in the attic. We've watched that too.
Going back to the Jackie and Shauna thing, obviously it's super heartbreaking how this season ends with them all casting Jackie outside, and then this being the first snowfall of the season.
And Shauna has that dream where she's made up with Jackie and said, wakes up and is like, come on back inside.
And as the first time viewer, you are certainly tricked that this is actually happening.
You think it's actually happening until when you get inside the cabin, and they're all there.
All kind of like speaking weird in unison.
And they all say something like, hi,
we love you,
Jackie.
Like,
and of course, Laura Lee is there. And I think at that point you realize, oh
shit. And then Laura Lee says something like, oh, you'll see it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And so at that time, you don't really know, like, are you inside Jackie's head while she's passing? Or then we realize, oh no, it's a dream. It's Shauna's dream. She realized she's feeling culpable for what happened. And then of course she goes to the window and sees that it has snowed. And Jackie is out there and she's ill prepared for the wilderness, as we've already discussed. So it's just a
heart-wrenching,
really heartbreaking moment that we see there. And they all come out and they're all crying, and we don't know what is going to happen next in that moment.
We don't know at this point.
Of course, that is not the only cliffhanger that we got going on.
It is not.
And Jessica Roberts was not the only cliffhanger. We have this big moment with Juliette Lewis, who at this point, after screwing everything up with Kevin Tan and no longer having Travis in her life and not able to control her sobriety whatsoever, and then having all this drama with the Yellowjackets, igniting all of a sudden, she tries to off herself. And then at that last moment, which I remember watching that for the first time too, that knock on the door as she's about to pull the trigger, is like, oh, and then she's abducted by cult members.
By cult members. Bye-bye. Now, the only thing is we didn't mention
and then
before.
You get that message, who the F is Lottie Matthews? So, yeah, as always, again, Juliette Lewis in that scene, her facial expressions are just absolutely heart-wrenching. And she's just so dynamic and so amazing. And kudos to her all throughout the season.
Now, what about the other cliffhanger that is really kind of crazy is so you've got Shauna and Jeff are at home watching TV, and they're just kind of celebrating, drinking some beers or something like that. And then
classic Shauna.
yeah,
and Jeff.
and then Callie comes home, and they're just like, oh, did she say, oh, would you like some popcorn or something? I don't know, whatever.
Why don't
Something
you sit down on the couch and forget about your trigonometry homework and let's watch some
popcorn.
TV.
And
Watch
then,
a
of course,
movie.
special report shows up on the TV, and it says, missing artist Adam so and so, and then of course Callie knows
Callie
who
knows
it
what
is.
he looks like because
Right.
she saw him at the rave.
And she's seen the driver's license.
You're
So
right.
she's totally like,
Yeah.
she knows who this person is.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what the hell is going on with my parents? So it just gets really like, wow, this is super uncomfortable.
Yeah, I have to say, just like I thought the pilot was like really a perfect pilot, I thought this season finale was really quite perfect. I mean, in general, you could say season 1 of Yellowjackets is almost near perfect. I mean, there's only a couple episodes I think had kind of a lull or quiet, but the most of it was really
It's jam-packed.
ever entwining
Yeah.
and always keeping you on the edge of your seats. It's the kind of show you have to watch at least twice, if not 3 times, to really catch everything that's going on. So
Totally.
wow, I don't know if we covered everything. I guess the only other note I had here, again, I just wanted to mention that supernatural element because, again, in that dream as well, there is the cabin daddy. But again, I think at the time we first watched it, we weren't really sure, was that a dream? Was that Jackie passing? Because the cabin daddy being in the dream, where does that image come from? They name him Jacques. He's French, obviously. I don't know how they know that. They never really explain how they know that, but they just say it. So don't really know about that. That's still a mystery.
Maybe we'll find out in
Well,
season
there was
3.
going to supposedly be that bonus episode all about
Oh, yeah,
the
but
guy,
that got
but
pulled or
it
something.
never happened. That was going to star Melanie Linsky's husband. So who knows what's
Maybe
going
somebody's
on
got an inside track. Anybody seen that?
there. I know, right? There's a couple photographs.
Oh,
And he's
okay.
the one who has the jacket. He's the one in season 2, the jacket, the really cool plaid jacket that's
yeah.
green, yellow, and red. He's the original owner.
Maybe at some point when if they release the DVDs and stuff, they'll do like bonus stuff. I don't know.
maybe.
I mean, I guess you could buy this on DVD, right?
Well, season 1, I know. I don't know if probably. I don't know. We should look that up.
We should check it out.
All right, so now we are coming in for a landing to get right down to the Lotus Point. This is our gauge of deciphering just how highbrow or lowbrow this first season of Yellowjackets is. I almost said Knots Landing. That's because if you don't know Knots Landing, you're like, what are they talking about? What is Lotus Point? Well, Lotus Point is a fictional location that is used in that series, but this is what we call our BROWMETER, and it's 1 to 5. What we do is we grade individual episodes from 1 to 5, whether or not it's lowbrow or highbrow. Now, just because something is lowbrow doesn't mean it's not good, and just because something is highbrow doesn't necessarily mean it's entertaining. Sometimes you can have something that's super uppity and highbrow, but maybe it's not that exciting. And sometimes you can have something that's lowbrow and it's fantastic.
I'm a big fan of lowbrow
He's a big fan.
myself.
We watch many things. We that's why we're doing this podcast. We're trying to find out ultimately where we fall. We had the first season of Knots Landing, which came in at a 3.75 out of 5. That's pretty high, actually, for a nighttime soap opera from the 80s. But, Knots Landing was always maybe a little bit higher quality than the others. Better acting, better
Now,
writing.
that being said, we still have to go through all those other seasons.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to stay that high.
It's not going to be that high. There will be seasons that are probably that high, but there are going to be seasons that are not high at all. Anyway, we went through before we just started this podcast, I got his BROWMETER ratings for each individual episode, and I got mine, and I tallied them all up. Drum roll, please. Oh, here they are, basically. You're going to see them right now on a slide.
Okay.
Episode. But after you do all of the math, the overall BROWMETER score for Yellowjackets Season 1 is 3.96.
Pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah, that's out of 5.
That's a 4. I mean,
Yeah, it's
pretty
a
much
4. It's a 4 out of 5.
So dang, and I think everybody would agree. And the only parts that are bringing it down from being highbrow would be like some of these, maybe sillier, misty moments, or some of this goofiness. But I mean,
still good.
That's part of what makes it fun.
Yeah.
right.
No, I like it. I love it.
So good job, 3.96 on that.
You know what? We will be back next week with our favorite things from
season two. Only 9 episodes, so maybe there'll be only 18 things.
Oh, it's only 9 episodes.
Can I just say,
okay.
We said there was only going to be 20 favorite things, and easily there was 57.
Way
like we
more.
said, easily.
There's way more. So we ask you that you please help us out. Okay. So one of the things that we ask you to do is if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, that would be fantastic.
Or over on Spotify, if that's where you're watching
and
the
Spotify
podcast.
as well. But at YouTube, again, we're at Seaview Circle, correct?
And you can always like individual episodes, or you can rate us over on the Spotify. Highly please, 5 stars would be preferable. You can also join Seaview Circle over on Instagram or over on Bluesky. And we're also on TikTok, where we have like little shorts, and we'll have some really interesting, fun stuff. You know, here's the thing we didn't really tell you, but a long time ago, way back in the day, if I can find this, we went to the Yellowjackets FYC event, and
We were very lucky.
We were
go
very
there.
lucky. We met.
We got to meet
pretty much everybody.
Yeah, pretty much everybody. And they were all really fun. It was a small little grouping. It was fun. That was a really good night.
We'll have some of that stuff coming up on the TikTok. And so, also, if you like what you saw here, again, our take on Yellowjackets, the 1 millionth podcast to cover Yellowjackets, please share it with like-minded friends.
Okay, so next week, we will be back with our thoughts on season 2 of Yellowjackets. So stay hungry, kids.
See you then.
Back on the sack.